we try to be very thorough to give everyone a platform to express their views and to broaden people's minds. So it's a great thing to come along to our public debates available to anyone who wants to come. The other thing we do is we run training sessions on Thursdays at 7 p.m. To attend these, you do have to be a member of the society. You can buy membership at the UCLU Cultural Society Centre, or you can buy it online at UCLU.org. And we're also this Sunday running an internal competition, which you can sign up to by looking at some of the links which are on our Facebook page, or looking at the emails which you might receive from running this. I encourage everyone to sign up to that, because it's going to be a really good internal competition. So now we're on to the debate tonight and how things will work specifically this debate. So firstly, you'll be able to see that lots of wine is there. We've just received a shipment of extra cups, so you can deal with the sheer amount of wine you have, and also the amount of soft drinks if you're not drinking dry January, as I am trying to. Another thing is recording. Unless you've received the specific consent of all the speakers who are recording, please do not record the event. You can see that we are live streaming the event and we're videoing the speeches, but we are very into informed consent. And if you don't want to be recorded during the floor speech period later, just mention it to me and you won't be able to shut it off. So that's how that works. Now the speeches themselves, each of the speakers here will have 7 minutes in which to put over their views. At 1 minute into their speech, Emma will do this, and then anyone in the audience or anyone on the other side can ask a question of the speaker, a point of information. Please say that by standing up and saying, I have a question, or on that point. Don't just blurt out what's going through your mind, and remember that your point can be accepted or it can be declined. So don't feel too bad if the person speaking doesn't have time to accept what you want to say. At 6 minutes, there'll be another single bag, and then please don't offer any more questions. At 7 minutes, and then the speech is coming to a close. If it gets to 7:15, we will bang some more and get riled up. That's how that works. We'll have the first speaker from the proposition side, then the first speaker from opposition, and the second speaker from proposition, and the second speaker from opposition. After we've had those main speeches, then we'll get to the floor speeches. At that point, anyone in the audience has an opportunity to come down and make a 3 minutes or less, if you don't have that much time in the speech. You can make these speeches on proposition, so in favour of this motion that porn should be illegal, or in opposition of it, so you don't want it to be illegal, or you can argue in abstention, which is the third position you can take, which is that you don't think either side is completely right, so you can't make up your mind, or you think there's something incorrect in the motion, which means you can't necessarily go one side or the other, something like that. Abstention means neither or. One of the big appeals of these floor speeches is that you can win things. You can win either a fine bottle of Scotch whisky this week, it's sometimes port, this time it's whisky, or some chocolate, which is Lindor and Lint and looks very nice. In fact, I had this stuff myself at Christmas, it's great. Both these things are Christmas. I encourage you to try and win it. After those floor speeches, then we'll have summary speeches from the speakers. Each side, that is proposition and opposition, will have 4 minutes total to make their summarising arguments and respond to everything the floor speakers have said and try and leave everyone in the audience with a final impression of what they think. First there will be the opposition summary speech and then the proposition summary speech. After that, we'll get to the vote and we'll decide who has won tonight. But in order to decide who has won tonight, we first need to take a vote before anyone has spoken, because we need to know what people think before they've been persuaded by the speakers. We need to know if you have any preconceived notions coming into this room. So if I can get my vote counters up to the front, and we can count who thinks themselves to be in proposition of this motion, in opposition of this motion, or in abstention of this motion. So proposition, again, the position that porn should be illegal. Opposition, the position that it shouldn't. Abstention, the position that you're not sure. Right. Who right now thinks they are in proposition of this motion? Who says porn should be illegal?
No.
Got those votes counted, haven't you? Now, who is in opposition to this motion? Who does not believe that? Okay, and who is in abstention? Who is not sure? Who is in the middle ground? Who's sitting on the fence? Thank you for those numbers, my fine vote counters. And now I'm going to introduce the speakers that we have here tonight. In order, I'll do all of them and explain who they are before we get to the first speech of the night. I'd like to hear applause for each one. So speaking first in proposition is Vicky Dark. Vicky is a feminist academic and a writer, specialising in transgressive sexualities, both in media and fiction for a PhD. Her work spans subversive erotica, biography and feminism. She works as a journalist, currently writing in New York for a New York magazine, Lebanet. Vicky is unique in that she spent her young life working within the UK glamour industry and has an inside perspective of pornography and the potent, violent objectification of women that this industry is built upon. She believes that laws need to be created to protect the vulnerable, as well as alterations to digital copyright ownership to protect human rights fully, and regulation of the sexualized inequality of the genre. So please welcome her. Speaking first in opposition is Vex Ashley. Vex is a former producer and creator with Pornography Project 4 Chambers. From a background in fine art, webcam performance and porn, Vex and 4 Chambers work to make collaborative, independent and creative films with sex to give a new perspective on what modern pornography can be. Please welcome them here tonight. Speaking second in proposition will be Dawn Savage. Dawn studied her second degree at Spurgeon's Bible College in Applied Theology before becoming ordinated as a Baptist minister with the Baptist Union of Great Britain. She's been the community's minister of Missouri Central Baptist Church, a fully inclusive and liberal Baptist church down the road from UCLU, for 2 years. Her role mainly focuses on engaging with the diverse communities that exist in the locality, including event planning for visitors and tourists, homeless and vulnerable work, and supporting residents. Dawn's engagement with this issue comes from a theological, pastoral, and ethical perspective. Please welcome her here tonight. And our final speaker speaking second in opposition is Paula Hall. Paula is a psychotherapist and sex therapist, writer and broadcaster who specializes in sex and pornography addiction. She is clinical director of Paula Hall Associates, who provide individual therapy, couple therapy, treatment programs for people with addiction, and support programs for partners. Paula is course director for the accredited diploma in sex addiction counselling and provides training to professionals throughout the UK and Europe. She is author of Understanding and Treating Sex Addiction and Sex Addiction, the Partner's Perspective, and is widely published in academic journals as well as the popular press. Within the media, she is regularly called to appear on national television and radio, as well as providing comment for the national press. Please welcome her here tonight. thank you to the audience for those very warm and kind welcomes. I'm hoping that the audience can be very respectful to our speakers tonight. And remember the ways you can engage in debate yourselves. You can give a floor speech. You can ask questions to the speakers. And lastly, the one I forgot, you can tweet. We have up here a live Twitter wall, and you can tweet with the hashtag UCLU debating. It may show up there. It's a limited number of things that we can put there. So we'll put the highlights there, but everyone can look on their own devices at what's going on the hashtag UCLU debating. If you don't feel confident in speaking, you can make sure to get your voice out there anyway by tweeting. So with no further ado, I would like to welcome, once again, the first speaker we have tonight, the first speaker in proposition to open the motion this House believes that pornography should remain legal, Vicky Dark.
Yeah. I'll leave it there. Everyone can hear me? Yeah? Yes. Okay, I'm Vicky Dark and I'm proposing the motion that pornography should be made illegal. At the first glance, you may feel that my advocacy seems reductive. So I want to emphasise that when I'm talking about pornography, I'm talking of the gonzo subset, which commands approximately 98% of porn that makes up the 70% porn share of all internet traffic. I used to be a glamour model, but the phrase in itself is a contradiction, because it's not glamorous and you're not a model. You're merely a masturbatory device for some sad bastard whose view of women has become so twisted that he now believes it's perfectly okay to view a woman as an object. I started out in the industry at 16, having left home at 14, after having what I call a non-relationship with my mother. I also got with a much older boyfriend and rented a room in a stranger's flat. One day I was spotted by a woman in a bar who gave me a card telling me I was pretty and asked me to be a glamour model for her agency. She said I would get £300 to £500 per shoot. This was a revelation, as I was living hand to mouth. A few weeks later, I was sent to an address far away. I arrived at a posh house in Forest Gate, London, given a couple of glasses of champagne, a full face of makeup, after being told the news that I was expected to have sex with someone on camera. At first I was shocked, then defiant because I had a boyfriend. But after they informed me that I would have to pay for my own cab back to the station and I realised I couldn't get home without the cash, I did it. This was the start of my love affair with the glamour industry and the beginning of my desensitisation and subsequent downfall. I stayed in it for a decade, having tried to leave many times but never succeeding, largely because I had no other job experience, as well as needing money. I have experienced the sex industry in its full diversity. And in that time, I've taken 2 overdoses, been raped, consistently manipulated, and was a functioning drunk. It's true to say that I'm a rehabilitated victim of sexual abuse who gave her consent. The turning point was recognising that I had to change for my young children at the time, as well as having furthered my education, which awarded me the ability to see the truth of what's happened to me. My aim is to help women who have been photographed and filmed but want to move on by introducing a law that allows them to buy these potentially damaging images back after 10 years for the price they originally paid. Additionally, I want the regulation of gendered sexualised inequality in porn so as to reduce the damage to consumers, both children and adults. And thirdly, for laws that demand health screening to prohibit the emotionally and mentally vulnerable from entering the industry in the first place. The female naked body has been a sight for much scrutiny in our committed capitalist existence. Our sexuality has been shaped by masculine ways of looking expressed through historical dominant patriarchal structures of what allure means. It is true to say that the sexual identity of women is polysemic and cannot be reduced to a simplified status. However, the social gender divide between women and men is subject to varying assumptions. Women are characterised as decoration, sexual objects and/or positioned within essentialist narratives such as nurturer, passive and slut, unless they exist outside of heteronormative culture, in which case they are invisible. This is in contrast to male representations who divert from such potent ambivalence to their sexual attractiveness and maintain far greater expressive range. Women incongruently being paid more within the porn industry is merely a reflection of the need for the genre to keep its spectacle in place. Otherwise, it simply couldn't function. Positive contribution to the prevailing cultural paradigm of what it means to be a woman is not going to be achieved by revealing more flesh in new forms. We've simply been there and done it. It's not radical, it's everywhere. True emancipation is refusing to participate and covering up for a change. To paraphrase, women need to recognise that they are being duped by the sexual entitlement culture into thinking that this vast sexual market supports them. This context now is that women's bodies have become hypersexualised from overuse, and all expressions of female nudity exist along a male-dominated axis. Female nudity is not distinct from the over-sexualisation of culture, which is a myth. It pays to keep men thinking that they're hopelessly horny. Porn is a $1 trillion industry. This has altered women's experience both in relationships and in terms of self-identification. Women are now sadly defined by their sex organs, not their personhood, which is socially engineered, not biologically. The prevalence of sex addiction is an important issue. In today's culture, with porn projected at us from the softcore mainstreaming of advertising to the hardened hardcore, desensitisation is a problem. Gonzo porn has been proven to disjoin what makes a healthy sexual relationship. Studies have been done whereby children as young as 11 are regularly consuming porn, and the subsequent idea that women are happy being gangbangs. They are arguably the next generation of warped sex addicts, logging in the small hours while their partner sleeps or avoiding sexual relationships altogether. Gonzo porn is presented as edgy and a reflection of freedom of expression, never presented in truth as one gender's dehumanised mass-scale visibility. If expression was really free and in porn, and in accordance with our treasured liberal sensibilities, then subgenres like alternative porn would be more popular, where both genders are consumed. But it's not, because the porn industry I'm talking about has the power over women. Are those porn addicts with their wry smiles really just addicted to the humiliation of women forever crystallised on 8mm film? And people are losing their virginity later because of porn, as well as accessing it to learn about sex. But who is the teacher? It's the greasy-haired, violent-minded pimps of women. Do you educated people here think you've got anything in common with them? These people who manipulate the next set of 16-year-olds into a life of mental trauma? If you do, then you haven't met the ones that I've met. If one makes a video that accords with the conventions of alternative porn, including shots of the female body in proportion to the shots of the male, then harm through objectification is reduced. I say reduced because we must be aware that the hypersexualised female body cannot be separated from the context of which it existed in, stemming from the long and ugly history of morbid female sexual objectification. This no doubt occurs when one gender is disproportionately scrutinised in lieu of the other, as in the bulging gonzo genre. A fair reflection would depict sensual scenes, that of lovers engaging in sex with camera shots that align to a neutral gaze, or even a bisexual gaze, if you like. This is the crux of the pornographic issue, the difference between gonzo porn, which commands the dominant idea, and the lesser known but healthier pornographic artistic expression that is alt porn, in which she is relieved somewhat of her morbid degradation. Alternative porn currently commands a tiny quantity of porn in terms of demographics, so it currently offers very little weight to the pornographic debate. But if greater credibility was given to this subset in alignment with the eradication of gonzo, then we as humans will be doing a great service to both our children and ourselves. There is no place for gonzo pornography. It is merely the graphic display of sexualised female violation. It is the dehumanisation of one gender to the misguided empowerment of another. In gonzo, the greater her degradation, the greater the thrill. The point of my argument is that consent is not informed as the genre is normalised through its ubiquity, and the choice to enter it is usually a reaction to a desperate situation. The vast majority of women who've experienced it feel ruined like me, having made a choice at low points in their lives. The only people who know what will happen to them are the producers who've seen it all before, who've got to remind the new set of naive girls that these pictures will be out there forever. Porn doesn't just hurt women who get involved, it also desensitised consumers, even producers who pit these women as nothing more than sexual fodder and fair game. For the sake of this debate, with the brute fact that gonzo porn is tantamount to what is known as sex industry, I advocate the House's proposition that pornography should be banned.
First speech and proposition for the motion, and can I now invite Vex, the first opposition speaker, to respond. Thank you.
Hi. This is weird, I've not done this before, sorry. So I think for me what's important to say first is that we're not talking about here is pornography involving non-consent. So no trafficking, children, rape, animals, anything that involves people being forced to have sex or make porn against their will. Those things are already rightfully illegal, and they're not pornography, they're abuse. But what pornography actually is kind of a debate, because if you're going to make something illegal, you have to be incredibly clear about what it is that's unacceptable. And does anyone actually have a definitive definition of pornography? Is it nudity, or sex on film, masturbation, making home videos with your partner, drawing explicit pictures? With no definitive explanation, banning pornography and worse, criminalizing it makes it so much easy. It makes it much easier for there to be abuses of that system. So, as with the recent enforced porn filters, it's not only gangbangs.com that's being censored, it's LGBT advice pages, it's sex education sites, and it's artists making work with nudity or sexuality. A blanket ban is kind of like a fishing net because it's not only catching what you want, it's also dragging massive amounts of unintended collateral up into its net. And if you're choosing to watch porn or not, you can't deny that a lot of people are. Making porn illegal criminalizes a massive percentage of the population. And as has been evidenced throughout history, prohibition doesn't work. When you push something underground and into the dark, you make it so easy for bad practices to go unaccounted for. Yeah?
We seem to be able to, for instance, ban and fight child pornography. What is the specific difference in other kinds of pornography that makes us not be able to enforce it without the kind of a...
I think anyone that probably works closely with trying to enforce the ban of child pornography would say, like many other, like the war on drugs, like everything else, it's actually made it's very prevalent, unfortunately, and that's something that isn't necessarily it's not being solved by that issue. I think making porn illegal also isolates LGBT people. Anyone with a sexuality that doesn't fit into the really narrow heteronormative window of public acceptability. The recent porn filters significantly target people with alternative sexualities, so particularly lesbian practices that are prevalent within the queer community. They're being unfairly censored. And the reality and diversity of sexuality is ignored by the mainstream media unless you're straight, white, and slim. And the popularity of porn is a testament to the fact that sex is a captivating part of our human experience. We've always explored these experiences through creative media, through recording and capturing and telling stories. Sex shouldn't be any different. People often talk about the porn industry like it's a big high-rise like Trump Tower with a big evil man rubbing his hands. But porn is at its heart a medium and not a monolith. There's a massive diversity. There's new startups, artists, amateurs, and hobbyists, and the well-established companies. And saying all porn is bad is like saying all comedy is bad, because it's a medium for ideas. Would a ban on all comedy ever be considered fair or acceptable in the way that this house is proposing with porn? My story of porn is kind of a modern one. I didn't sit on a casting couch in LA. I was at art school making work with my naked body. I decided to start performing on webcam sites in order to pay my way through university. And that's how I was initiated into the online community of people who are doing sex work. They're primarily women, they're working for themselves and in their own way. They taught me most everything I know about class politics, race, gender, and feminism. And they showed me how diverse the spectrum of people that make pornography actually are. I began experimenting to see if I could put sex on film in a way that felt true to me and interesting to me. And 2 years later, that's my full-time job. We never worked with a porn studio. We never answered to anyone. We raised money to make more work and pay performers fairly through crowdfunding. The response has honestly been incredible. We don't have to answer to anyone. We make our own vision and it's on our own terms. And it's actually not that uncommon. Webcam sites and amateur clip stores are some of the quickest growing sectors of the adult industry. They're heralding a new diversification and democratization of porn. There's no male curator deciding who is and isn't marketable. And people can say that pornography is giving people unrealistic expectations and pressures when it comes to sex, and that porn is the only form of sex education that people are getting, and that scares them. That definitely scares me too. I mean, I'd be really worried if the only frame of reference we had for driving was like the Fast and the Furious. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that should be made illegal. We can understand the unrealistic car chases in films because we have a good context for driving in everyday life. Because we don't talk about sex, because it's hidden and it's shunned, we're not equipping young people with a good context to be able to place that unrealistic performance into sex in everyday life. And that isn't just the fault of the entertainment industry, but that's on all of us as a society to talk more honestly and without shame about the realities of sex. And I'm not here to tell you that porn is perfect. It's definitely not. Like every other media platform, it's dominated by straight white men who are making work to please other straight white men. They fear change. It capitalizes on and is sometimes a painful mirror to our society's misogyny, like every other media platform. It has diversity and accessibility issues, like every other media platform. But it is changing. There are already more women, more people who are trans, more people of color who are performing, producing, and directing porn than there are in Hollywood. We need more voices and more perspectives. We have a choice. We can accept it's natural for some people to have curiosity and a desire to watch sex. We can work to make sex on film more diverse, more accessible for everyone. We can support labor rights and safety for the people who are making it, and not contribute to the stigma that currently isolates them from society. Or we make both watchers and makers into criminals, and put our hands over our eyes, stick our fingers in our ears, and we hope that it all just goes away.
Thank you to Vex. That is the first speech in opposition of this motion. And thank you to everyone who's recognising to move around and get drinks and leave during the gaps in speeches, not during the speeches. That's very polite to do. Thank you. So now, can I invite, please, the second speaker of proposition, Dawn Savage, to give us
Thank you. As a bit of a disclaimer, my experience is not in the porn industry, it's in a church. And my experience when it comes to this issue is mainly with pastoral care to those who struggle with addiction or who are struggling with shame around this whole issue. I'm not going to stand here and argue the reasons because of the women who are being abused by this industry, because my partner here has already done that fantastically, and I don't feel I need to say anything more on there. I think she's done it amazingly. But I'm standing for the proposition of to make porn illegal, and I'm coming at it from an argument of consumerism and overconsumption and abuse and coveting what we cannot have. Our whole world, our whole system is built on consumerism, and every single one of us in here is a slave to consumerism. And every form of slavery has a form of abuse within it. And none of us are free from that. And I would say when we bring the porn industry into that, the problems become exemplified and they are 10 times worse. Now, I agree with my opposition over here that we're not going to ban the Fast and the Furious, but the people the actors in the Fast and the Furious weren't abused in the making of that film. But in the porn industry, clearly, like there is abuse happening on both sides. I sit and I talk with not just men, but prevalently men, young guys who are struggling with how to express themselves. They're struggling with shame. They're struggling with other forms of addiction because of their addiction to the porn that they can get so prevalently online. Sex and the commodity of sex is entirely pervasive in all of our culture. You see it everywhere. I mean, and I'm not talking about trying to make illegal the underwear catalogues that the 10-year-old or the 11-year-old boy finds in his mum's bedroom and is overexcited by that. That's not what I'm talking about. But there is this reality that within this whole industry that it is not controllable. It is not easily dealt with, and we need to put a harder stamp down on this. We need to put some harder regulations in and make more forms of porn illegal. There are already, I would say, parts of the porn industry that are, you have child pornography, you have snuff porn, and all these things are clearly illegal, but it is a small step from that to the lesser forms, and we need to bring a harder line down on some of these things. We've talked about, I've talked about the problem with objectification in all forms of consumerism, that we are held captive by our desires. We have this idealistic view that to have more is to be better. In the Western world, entirely to consume more is to be better. That we must have more if we have to stay on top, to be complete, to be whole. And this comes with sex as well. We are told that we must have sex to be complete. We must have sexual partners to be complete. Now, I know I'm from the church, and I know that many of you probably expect a prudish background, but like I said earlier, our church is liberal. We're not into that. We're not into kind of like shutting the sex out. We want to talk about it, but we need to have better sort of regulations and rules and things on this, because at the moment the system we have is not working, because porn is legal at the moment essentially, and it's not working. So we need to find another way of dealing with it. That's basically what I
Thank you to Dawn for that excellent speech and proposition of this speech. And now I'd like to invite the final main speaker to give their final main speech. Paula Hall, the second opposition speaker.
Right, I think actually these talks just get shorter and shorter. The first two were so good that a lot of the points that perhaps Dawn and I are going to make have already been covered. I suppose I want to start by saying there's a heck of a lot of porn out there that I really don't like. I do think a lot of pornography is misogynistic. I do think that, unfortunately, an awful lot of pornography sets unrealistic expectations for people's sex lives. Personally, I disagree slightly with Vicky. I think that actually the body image stuff affects men just as much as it does women. Penis size, how long you can last for, this, that, and the other. So I think it really does set people up with unrealistic expectations. There's loads of stuff that I really do not like about the porn industry, and that's just talking about the legal stuff. Obviously, I don't like the illegal stuff. But at the end of the day, I think as long as pornography is consensual, then actually people have the right to choose what they want to watch and what they want to do for a living. It's not something that I would want, and I completely agree with what Vicky was saying about, well, and what Bex was saying about the importance of the way that people get into this industry. But I think just whether you like something or not is not in itself actually a right to make it legal. So I specialise in porn addiction. Porn addiction affects about 1 in 20 people. I suspect it's actually a heck of a lot more than that. If any of you are thinking about sitting and wondering what should I do for a career, don't become a porn addict, but work in porn addiction, because it is a massively growing. This is a growth industry at the moment. It can affect anybody, men, women, young, old, straight, gay, Christian, Muslim, Jew, anybody can be affected by pornography addiction. Sorry?
On that point.
Oh, sorry.
What are the diagnostic criteria for porn addiction rather than just porn use on a regular basis?
Okay, there aren't any diagnostic criteria, is the first thing to say. Lots and lots of people disagree, and I'm going to get into another debate, whether or not addiction is an accurate label. Professionals do not disagree that more and more people are struggling with what they perceive as out of control porn use. Porn that's getting in the way of getting into normal relationships, it's causing erectile dysfunction. It's one of the biggest causes of erectile dysfunction in young men nowadays. I mean, basically, if you're doing something a lot and you don't want to do it and it's causing problems in your life and you're trying to stop and you can't, you got a problem. Frankly, I don't care if you call it addiction, compulsion, hypersexuality, impulse control disorder, or a whole host of other names. If it's a problem, it's a problem. Back to my point. So yeah, pornography addiction is undoubtedly a problem, whatever you want to call it. And the biggest block to people getting help is the secrecy and the shame that surrounds it. Now, it's not necessarily the shame about watching porn. Yeah, there are a load of people who don't necessarily have a moral issue with porn. What they do have a moral issue, though, is with the fact that they're betraying a partner, they've got erectile dysfunction, they've got a girlfriend or a boyfriend sitting there, standing in bed, waiting for them, but actually they'd rather masturbate to porn than actually be in bed with them. The fact that they're leaving the party early because they'd rather go and watch porn. That is the dependency that creates the shame, not necessarily the behaviour itself. So my 3 reasons why I think that porn should not be made illegal. The first is that it would criminalise my client group. They've got enough bloody problems as it is, thank you very much, without actually turning them into criminals as well. The second objection I have to making it illegal is that when it comes to actually providing care, healthcare for these people, for my client group, then actually what it's doing, getting into these debates, is turning what I believe to be a mental health issue into a moral issue. Yes, of course there are moral arguments and moral debates around pornography, but I think we need to separate them from some of the very, very real health problems that are happening. And finally, and this has been said by others already, frankly, it's impossible. Completely impossible. Yes, the gentleman said earlier, yes, child pornography is illegal. Has that actually helped us reduce the amount of people looking at child porn? No. The #1 search term for porn, so porn search, about 25% of all search terms that happen on a daily basis are for porn. 25%, so that's 63 million. And the #1 search term within the genre of porn is for teenage. And you may or may not know that actually the definition for child porn is under the age of 18. Yeah, it's not under 16. You can have sex at 16, but you cannot take a photograph of it and send it to anybody. Then you're just distributed, you make it on child pornography, distributed it and whatever. It would just drive it more underground. It will drive it into the proxy servers. It will make it harder to regulate. So for me, what I believe we need to do is actually do more in terms of regulation. I think Vex made a very important point about the problems with over-blocking. So we're trying to, obviously, a lot of the blockers tend to over-block, and there's an organisation called AppHolder who's doing quite a lot of work on that, but we absolutely need to make sure there isn't the problem of over-blocking. But we also need education. And again, as Vex, I think, very eloquently said, an awful lot of people are getting their sex education from pornography. We still live in a country where there is no statutory relationship education. Yeah, sex and relationship education is still not statutory. What's going on here?
Right.
We still, in this society, it is still not statutory to have that education. The vast majority of the sex education we do tends to be about harm reduction. Yeah, and I do think there's been gender differences here. Don't get pregnant, don't get an STI, and don't get reputation if you're a woman. Yeah, if you're a guy, don't get an STI, don't get her pregnant. You don't have to worry about reputation, you'll be pleased to hear. You also don't have to worry about anyone hurting your feelings, because of course only women have emotions when it comes to sex. None of you. You can go out, do what comes naturally, just don't hurt her feelings, because you don't have any, they just got cut off your feelings out. So education, #1, education is the most important thing. And my concern, if we make pornography illegal, is that it would lull society into a false sense of security and just reinforce we don't have to talk about things anymore because we've made it illegal. Okay, yeah.
Thank you, Paula, for that excellent and very fine speech in opposition to the motion. And now I've got through the main speeches, I can give you a second to appreciate all between some of the boards, move to the floor speeches, which are, as I said at the beginning, 3 minutes in length, if you can make it all the way. And the way that will work is that 30 seconds into the speech will hang once, like this. And then, as in the main speeches, you can be offered a point of information, or you can, people can offer them and you, the speaker, can refuse them. At 2 minutes, 30 seconds, there'll be another single bang, and then there'll be no more POIs, and at 3 minutes, we'll bang twice to let you know that you should finish. Don't feel obligated to go the full 3 minutes. You can make an amazing full speech. You can win if you, only 30 seconds, if you only have 1 point, if it's really exceptional. So don't feel that you have to go the full way to come up. So that's what I'm going to move to, just after thanking everyone for being very kind and courteous to all the speakers. This is a divisive issue, and thanks for listening kindly to everyone and showing respect to the ideas that have been put forward. And I hope people can keep that up. And also, another reminder, not to video people unless you've received their express consent, I'm going to be asking each speaker for their express consent. Now, by the way, no further ado, who would like to make a floor speech in proposition of this motion? Who would like to come up here and speak for a short period, saying that they think pornography should be made illegal? It looks like I have a hand there from a man staring at me. Come on.
Yeah. Can you catch me from here? If you want. I mean, I'm also having off the light, and I probably won't get hurt anyway. Or hurt. So 3 minutes is very little time. Let's get cracking. First of all, can I remind everyone that we have heard a testimony that's repeated all the time, of people being massively abused in a way that no one here should tolerate in an industry, and that whatever way we try to regulate, fix, reform, do whatever we want to do in Fantasyland has not helped these people. And I think that we should all very much consider not only whether there's a perfect solution, but whether or not this could go to some extent to helping people who are being abused, who are being raped, or who are being pushed into areas they don't consent. So in other words, it is, even if it is the case that there are other options, I don't think that that's only what the debate's about. I think it's fair that if you can have a blanket ban that solves that problem, that's a good thing. Second thing, can we also be very clear that a good way of banning things, no thank you, is like banning things, having things done for profit. Maybe we can't ban everything, maybe we can't ban all instances. We can at least not allow corporations who make a profit to do this. That would get rid of nearly all the gun support, and it would probably also give more space for other ways of expressing sexuality online, in videos and so on. That would allow the kind of people who want to spread this kind of discourse to just publish that in the way that they want to publish it. Here is the concern that I generally have. And it lies with the consumers, it lies with the demand that has it, right? Like, note that there are probably a wide range of people who consume pornography. There are probably kind of people who just don't care if the people they're watching are actually getting hurt. We probably can't do anything about them. They're probably going to watch illegal porn. They're probably the ones watching child pornography. There's probably also the kind of people who are so committed to doing the right thing that they seek out 4 chambers, which probably is a very good and ethical site. No, thank you. I think there's a very big group of people who really just have other things in their mind, and they access pornography through free streaming sites such as YouPorn, such as the other sites that exist that provide this. These sites provide pornography produced by a vast range of producers, all from like the massive corporations to the people doing things independently. What's the problem here? The problem is that for the person who's watching this pornography in a very short time period, probably like 4 to 30 seconds, is probably want to rely on the fact that what this person is watching is safe and fine. But note that the profit that is derived from this view, through advertising, whatever, is equal to anyone, like ethical and non-ethical producers. What does that mean? That means that as long as this is legal and the government sanctions it, that means that every time you watch like a teen film or whatever, and it says this person is 18, you source out that morality to the state that says this is okay. You source out the morality to know that this is actually a consenting person. This is actually a teenager. Because you're not consuming this from the producer. You don't know who made it. You don't know where it was. You don't know who the person is. That moral hazard is what enables the production of pornography that is so harmful and hurts lots of people. If we lose out a little bit by at least banning the commercial production of pornography, I think that is a price that we should be willing to pay.
First proposition for this motion. Can I now get someone to argue the opposite position? Can I now get someone who wants to make a floor speech in opposition to this motion? It looks like I have 2 hands. I'm going to pick the one whose hand went up first, but we have multiple rounds, so don't give up. I'll go to the person in the green jumper. He's come out.
Hiya, I'm going to argue that we should not ban pornography from two major perspectives. First, quite a negative point about what illegality will do, and second, probably a more positive point about what we can acknowledge about porn that is good. Before I start, I don't want to, at any point in my speech, be trying to insinuate that porn is not problematic. I'm going to try and address these points as I go on, and instead talk about how banning will be a force for harm, when in fact we can actually harness porn to be an ultimate force for good. So before I start, in fact, no, I'm going to start. As noted previously, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about it, banning porn will only drive porn further underground. We've noted that people are naturally interested in sex. People want to look at sex. There's clearly a market for porn. We've talked a lot about exploitation and how poor that is, but when you drive porn underground, what you then get is actors that would normally want to work in the industry or be inclined to work in the industry being afraid to do so for fear of their own career. Instead, what you do is therefore leave the most vulnerable people to be the people more likely to take up this option as a career choice. Whilst you're more vulnerable, you might feel more inclined to take up more desperate options, and therefore, as I say, you are likely to become involved in porn when therefore your consent is not necessarily as adequate as it might be for somebody who would otherwise make the free choice to do so, but it's not illegal. Secondly, again, the criminalisation of addicts has been largely very well covered, but again, people will not seek the adequate help they require in order to establish healthy sexual relationships when otherwise they would be lacking it when they're looking at this porn that is illegal and is now underground. Secondly, I want to talk about, like, as I said earlier, the more positive implications of porn. Again, we know that porn is problematic. Porn is, in many cases, misogynistic and objectifying of women, and I think possibly the most important point I've ever heard about pornography is that currently it is made largely by the film industry and not the sex industry. It acknowledges that it has a market, but the current acknowledged market is men. I think this can be something that we can positively change to acknowledge that certain groups do have and enjoy sex. People who are gay is already a huge audience for porn, but it could be grown. Transgender porn, disability porn, but I think, again, most importantly is the argument for women. Again, it's not crucial, right? Sorry, it's not very well done right now, but at the moment, women are at least acknowledged as enjoying sex in porn. It's acknowledged that women can orgasm. That's a thing that happens. Shockingly.
So why is the empowerment of sexualisation for women so inherent to what you're saying? Because surely that's third wave feminism. Fourth wave has nothing to do with that. We've acknowledged that women are sexual creatures. Why is that such a thing that's so amazingly profound now? It's not. It's been acknowledged years ago.
I think it's eternally relevant. I think sometimes, and I was going to go on to just quickly mention that, again, there is an issue when it comes to things like catcalling and objectification of women, but porn can also be used as an opportunity to show what express consent is, to also show to people that this is what healthy sex looks like. Whilst it's not at the moment, whilst it's still problematic, we can use it as a medium that is widely watched and enjoyed to show that for women. And again, I think we need to portray an accurate representation of women's sexuality as opposed to just acknowledging that it's there, and we can use porn as a medium to that. So, thank you.
Thanks for that really great first opposition for this speech. If now I can ask for the third position which can be taken, an abstention for speech. Someone who's willing to come up and say something not entirely on one side or the other, somewhere in the middle. Ziggy.
Sex work is often said is the oldest profession. In studies where primates have been introduced to the idea of currency, they've immediately started exchanging this currency for sexual favours. Sex work can often be said to be seen as capitalism distilled, and with other capitalist engines, there's a hell of a lot of abuse. Sex workers are often trafficked, abused, raped, manipulated, but they can also be financially and creatively empowered. Primark, Nike, Gap, Apple, other capitalist companies also are full of human rights abuses of their workers. And yet, I doubt that nobody in this lecture uses or wears any of their products. Sex work should be seen as any other form of work, and therefore if we want to reform or ban it, we should treat it as other things like non-adult film industries, clothing industries, media industries. It should be reformed, but so should other things. That's what I have to say.
Thank you for that. Really great again. First abstention speech. Now I'm going to go back to the beginning and ask for another proposition speech. To remind everyone again, the motion is this house would make pornography illegal. It looks like I have a few hands. Proposition speech. Okay, there in the white jumper with the black marina hair. Please come down.
Hi. So I want to address some of the points made in Rex Ashley's speech. Firstly, so you talked to my very nervous. So you talked a little bit about LGBT sexuality being represented in porn. However, I would argue that those representations are fetishizzations that lead to lesbians hating themselves and leading to not being able to discover their sexualities. As a bisexual woman, lesbian porn led me to not be able to understand my sexuality for a long time, and it led to me and many other lesbian bisexual women I know feeling that they were only seen as sexual objects. This goes also for women of colour in porn, I think you talked about. I don't think the representation of women of colour in porn is representation when it's a fetishization. Most women of colour in porn are completely dehumanised and shown in the worst possible way of any women in porn. You also talked about there being a false equivalence between porn and trafficking. However, consensual porn and trafficking are not separate. As the demand for consensual porn increases, so does the demand for trafficking, and the two benefit and profit off each other.
Interesting. So, do you have anything to back that up?
Do you have anything? Not only by completely.
No, absolutely, yeah.
I
Because it is difficult. Like, there's definitely trafficking is totally illegal and totally wrong.
Make sure it's not a speech.
Sorry.
Absolutely,
yeah.
The other point I have is that several people have said that the sex industry is the same as any industry on capitalism, but I would argue that sex plus coercion is different to manual labour plus coercion. One is rape, one is work. They're not the same thing. You need to single one out to understand that one is pure rape and it's not acceptable. And the final point I have is about consent and choice. I would say that even if a woman chooses to enter the porn industry, does that make what's happening to her okay? Can any of us really make two choices under capitalism? And what does choice have to do with rape and abuse?
Thank you for that really good speech in proposition to this motion. Can I now get another speech in opposition to it? Someone willing to go on that side of things? Yeah, Matt?
So one common theme that seems to unite all of the people on this panel is they agree that some aspects of porn are really good and others aren't so much. So to me, the natural tendency is to think, well, how do we create the conditions as a society for the alternative genres of porn to thrive and to try and stamp down the ones that aren't so beneficial for us? Just like to support some of the points from the proposition as well. They make this point that there's a lot of academic research to support the fact that women are somehow abused and misrepresented in porn. Yes, there is, but there is also significant academic research from the other perspective. For example, McKee 2007 argues that there is no relationship between consumption of porn and negative attitudes developed towards women. Now, all of this information comes from a theoretical standpoint from catharsis, which actually argues that people get relief from watching porn, kind of psychological relief. And we can see this, for example, people who kind of feel deprived of a sexual life for physical or mental reasons can perhaps experience the kind of sex they want to vicariously through porn, and that could be tremendously beneficial. Now, my other point has to do with education. So in this country, we have a really bad problem delivering sex education in the right way. Now, that could be because in sex education classes, the whole content just seems so completely departed from any context in which the learners might find themselves in. So porn could be a really big way of humanizing sex in the sex education classroom. So therefore, I think if we could find a way to tailor this so that it becomes a societal asset, overall that would be a really positive thing for society.
Thank you to Matt for that really excellent speech in opposition to the motion. And now again, I come to the third of our options. I come to abstention. Someone is straining very high in the air. Really please, in the purple shirt.
Okay, so basically what I'm going to argue is yes and no to this question at hand. Because I believe that not all porn should be illegal, but porn can be harmful and that changes need to be made. So it's a yes and no answer, so that's why I'm going for abstention. So I think we've already previously mentioned about the issue of rape. Well, it's all very well to sort of, bypass the issue of rape, but I think that it's not so much the issue of whether it's blatant rape, but it's very hard to distinguish in porn whether or not it is a case of rape. So issue of contracts, for example, someone might sign up to pornography and quite seriously specify what they want to and what they don't want to do, but then these contracts have loopholes and whatever, which means that issues of rape become less distinguished, which means that women who need money end up trapped in this sort of issue of less consent parts of porn. So that means issue of consent and contracts are a vital part of porn that aren't necessarily a fantastic part. And seeing women as sexual objects is a fundamental part of porn. Seeing women as objects for penetration, for example. And also seeing women from a men, no thank you, seeing in porn from a man's point of view. Now this is incredibly damaging because this is an issue of gender roles, for example. So this is a historic view of women that don't enjoy sex, and gender roles point to women being submissive and men being dominant. And pornography tends to encourage this point of view. So this is an out-of-date historic point of view and an incredibly damaging gender role point of view. In the patriarchy, women are seen as submissive, and this just isn't the case. We shouldn't be advocating this point of view that pornography tends to advocate. Porn sites, for example, there are many different categories and only one that is female-friendly. Not only is this condescending, because it suggests that women don't actually enjoy porn, but it assumes that women don't watch porn at all or don't masturbate. And this is an incredibly damaging taboo that we need to get over. And porn advocates this horrible, damaging point of view that we actually, sexist-wise, need to get beyond. And so not only this, but lesbian porn, for example, is made not for lesbians, but in fact for men. And what kind of message does this send? That this is sexuality, that is an object for men to enjoy, but not for women of that sexuality to enjoy. So what does that exactly say? That it is a piece of entertainment
for men. And it's not just the fact that women are damaged, but in fact, as has previously been mentioned, men are damaged by the fact of penis size and how long that they actually last. But this isn't actually just the case, but in fact, that women can have an advantageous point from porn, in that there are feminist awards for porn, and that consent should be respected, and that women should have the right to their own bodies and should have the ability to get over the taboo that I've been previously mentioning. So, and that actually women do masturbate, and that this is a good thing in our society to accept. So rather than just saying this is taboo, we should get over this and advocate that porn should be good, but there are aspects of it that should be illegal.
Thank you, the microphone's out, but thank you for that excellent abstention floor speech. Now I think there is enough interest, so we're going to go round for a third set of floor speeches. And can I
say a couple of things?
Could you save it up for the summary speeches, which will be happening in 9 minutes? So not very long.
Okay.
It'll be really good by that time. So, just before we get to that, can I get the first of my last 3 floor speeches? Can I get a floor speech in proposition of this motion? Someone who does think that we should make pornography illegal. Can I get a proposition floor speech? Okay, there in the checkered red and blue shirt, please come down.
I mean, I'll pretend I have one. That's okay. I'm flying by the seat of my pants here. But what has struck me about, I'll keep this very brief, what struck me about a lot of the arguments in opposition to this motion is that it seems to be about the right to get our rocks off and the fact that wanking makes us feel good, which is obvious. Porn is not an issue of whether or not wanking makes us feel good. Porn is a human rights issue, and it's an economic issue. And that seems to have been somewhat glossed over. Understandably, you know, there's a great deal of alternative porn on the internet, which I presume empowers creatively its creators and, you know, its producers and its performers. However, not the, is it 98% of non-alt porn? Not all of those performers of gonzo porn have that privilege. And I would like to ask those performers if they feel creatively empowered and if they felt free to explore sex in a way that interested and empowered them. Sorry, one moment. I'll keep it really short though, I promise. And I'd like to, this industry is one which produces women as a commodity. It's not one that sees them in an equal light. It's not one in which they can invest, really. It's an industry owned by men. It's a $1 trillion industry. And I would like to ask the products of this $1 trillion industry if they feel free, you know, if they feel like they're not products, if they can invest in it, if they have a say in, you know, the creation that they're being a part of. Also, I mean, I think that Ms. White Jumper put it pretty well, but it's an issue of consent, and porn and consent has never sat well with me, purely because as soon as you introduce an economic aspect to any issue of consent, it becomes a transaction. It isn't an agreement. And I don't think that any kind of, any contract with a financial incentive is a free choice. It's more one where, as you say, it's hand to mouth and it's not fair. So.
Thank you for that excellent floor speech and proposition. As you can see by the person in blue, there is still wine down here. Come down, break in speeches if you want any of these. Make sure to be quick about it. If everyone can be quiet about getting their wine. So
Hi, so I want to talk about it from a slightly alternative angle. I want to talk about Instagram. So Miley Cyrus put her boobs on Instagram. It was deleted immediately. Other things that have been deleted on Instagram, the hashtag curvy. That's because women's bodies, especially alternative women's bodies, are so hypersexualized. So if we're banning porn, all porn, that's what the thing is. We want to ban all porn, the house or whatever. If we're banning all porn, we are literally banning women's bodies. If you can't post on Instagram hashtag curvy, because being curvy is somehow obscene, then you can't express yourself in any way, shape, or form. Women's bodies are so hypersexualized that they are intrinsically related to porn. So if you ban porn in all forms, then you ban the expression of women's bodies. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you for that excellent floor speech in opposition to the motion. And if now I can search out the final floor speech that we have time for, the third abstention floor speech. Looks like I'm going to have to go again. It's very attractive to me, someone who's doing a proper Hermione. Straight blonde in your hair, please come down.
Okay. Since we're on the topic of porn, I'll try and see if I can last the whole 3 minutes. Now, guys, we only have 3 minutes. Calm down. If a small child died every time I watched porn, would I stop watching it? No. Guys, this is serious. It's, as has been said, it's $1 trillion industry. It's the same size as the economy of South Korea or Canada. There are very powerful people lobbying for its preservation. If we honestly tried to illegalize pornography, it would be like trying to delete South Korea. I mean, could you imagine trying to delete South Korea? Like, fuck off, you know? But I do not have either the dishonesty or the nerve to say that pornography in its current form is acceptable, or that pornography in its current form can be left unchanged. Now, one industry very similar to the pornography industry, albeit slightly different, is that of prostitution. And I'd like to take the example of Switzerland, which is hailed as a progressive country worldwide. Prostitution in Switzerland is legal. You can go to downtown Geneva. There are drive-in brothels, or so I've read on the BBC. And not only do all commercial sex workers in Geneva, as they're called, have to be screened for STIs. Not only does their pay and their work benefits, pensions, and so forth have to be guaranteed by government regulation, but abuse in the prostitution industry in Switzerland is among the lowest of any country in the world. Would I hire a prostitute in London? No, because in London, where prostitution is to a large degree illegalized, or at least brothels are, there is a lot of exploitation in the prostitution industry. Not that I'm equating prostitution to pornography, but I feel that we can take an example of a success story in the legalization and heavy regulation of prostitution in Switzerland and say that that should at least merit consideration as a strategy for ameliorating pornography worldwide. We would be sad to see it go, and frankly, that won't happen. Can we improve it, and with it, the lives of those who participate in it? I really believe so. Thank you.
Thank you for all those floor speeches. I think all of them were really good, and it's going to be very difficult deciding which one was the best, but someone has to do all of these. I'll leave all of you and go for more 10 minutes for now. Because for now, we're getting to the summary speeches, which I remind you start with the opposition team, 4 minutes between them combined, and then we'll go to the proposition team, 4 minutes between them combined. So I'll just put this microphone down here in the middle of you. I think it's charged up. So the way it will work is that No points of information can be offered during this. We want people to have a clean sheet to make their views as clear as they can be in the period before final voting. Each of the two speakers on proposition have 4 minutes between them. The two speakers on opposition have 4 minutes between them. So they can split it up how they want. Each speaker can take 2 minutes, or one can take 4. We'll only provide you with a guideline by banging once at 2 minutes, twice at 4 minutes, to let you know you're halfway through, and to let you know that you're at the end. So I hope that's clear to everyone. No more POIs. Feel free to tweet though. I hope it's clear to the speakers. And so I would like to invite the opposition speakers to summarise their arguments and how they think the debate has gone.
Okay, very quickly, I wanted to correct a couple of things. The average time that people watch porn in the UK is 9 minutes, not 3 minutes. Just some research. Just I think was a bit of a naive idea about taking, if we could get rid of the commercial side of pornography, and the figure I've got is £93 billion. So take $93 billion rather, take that out of the world economy. What happens? I mean, yeah, they're porn producers, but they buy cars that go through manufacturers, that buy components, they buy bread, they buy milk. Yeah, it comes out of the world's economy, so it's a bit naive to think we'll just stop that. The other thing I want to say about research, I do know a lot about research, and actually there's been some updates on research and the links between violence and pornography. The problem is it's very hard to do research on this ethically. Yeah, ideally what you need to do is take 20 people, make them watch hardcore porn and see how their lives turn out. Take another 20 people and not let them and see how their lives turn out. You can't do it. There's a big difference between causation and correlation, and a lot of the statistics are actually correlation, not causation. So in the same way as we used to think that actually smoking didn't cause lung damage, we now, because of longitudinal studies, know that that's a myth, and I suspect personally we are going to see a heck of a lot more damage as a result of porn. We're going to have to accept that actually this is causation, not correlation. But in knowing that, education, it will never, we won't be able to make it illegal. That is just naive. Education and regulation, but even then you're not going to regulate it fully. It has got to be about education. If people are going to make choices, they need to be educated choices.
So I'm a feminist and I support the labour rights of all people, but especially women and especially marginalised people, to make a free choice about what they want to do with their bodies under a capitalist and patriarchal system. And that system is built primarily to reward men. And I'm not going to get into it here, but I do think that it's really ironic that we're taught that one of the few professions that primarily redistributes wealth from men to women is oppressive and shameful and damaging. Sex work can challenge the class and gender power dynamic that we've become accustomed to under capitalism. And with the point of objectification, I think it's really important to say that gay porn is a massive, massive industry. Where is the objectification there? So all of the same rough sex tropes that we see within gonzo porn, within everything, are prevalent within gay porn. It's not necessarily just an issue of misogyny. That is an issue. That's a question that we need to ask ourselves. And it's horrible to hear about bad experiences in any industry, and porn is different from other industries because you're also shamed and stigmatized from the outside. But if you push it underground and you make it into this kind of dark and horrible thing, you allow bad practices to go unaccounted for, and it's not the answer. We need to pay attention. It will always be made, it will always be watched. We can be proactive. And there's a lot of porn that I don't enjoy, just like there's a lot of comedy that I don't find funny and films don't make me cry. But at the moment, the reason why we have a very particular kind of porn is because porn may be a massive money-making industry. Porn does not make anywhere close to the amount of money that it used to make. So porn companies are scared, and they only want to produce what they think will sell, and they only think they can sell to a middle-aged dude at home in his own with his credit card. That's not the people that are watching porn. The demographic of people watching porn is vast. We need to fund good porn, we need to educate people about porn, and we need to give people the opportunity to make a choice about the kind of porn that they want to watch. I think it's really interesting to have a representative from the church here, because it's kind of a really interesting example, because I think we could probably agree that the church has been complicit in the institutional subjugation, shaming and ostracization of women in the past and possibly today. its morals and ethics and actions have supported the persecution of gay people. Does that mean that the church is dangerous and should be made illegal, or has it been allowed to grow and to reevaluate and to adapt and to modernize? Can you actually define pornography? Can you guarantee that vital needed information, public freedoms and livelihoods would not be compromised by a ban? Should we ever vote to criminalise a large percentage of our population? Would making porn illegal actually work?
Thank you, opposition speakers, for this excellent combined summary arguments. And now I'll pass the baton to the proposition speakers to make a proposition summary and a summary of the debate as a whole. So please welcome them.
Thank you. I find it interesting how you're offering such a forceful riposte in support of pornography and nudity and liberalism under a blanket term, because if you consider it, liberalism might be a euphemism because it by default oppresses women. Liberalism oppresses women. So for one moment, put your liberalist sensibilities aside and consider that it's not truly consensual, pornography. Okay, how can a decision made when you're young or in your teens ever be truly consensual? We all look back and we all have regrets, even at your young ages. You have regrets for the decisions you've made when you're teens, okay? Okay, pornographers lie about celebrity, about stardom, about money. They don't care about the aftermath, that's for sure. People in the porn industry don't change, they just get older. They are still telling those lies, they're still telling them to the latest crop of vulnerable kids, and they're still being believed. It's all going on, it's just a recycling thing, and it's gonzo pornography, and gonzo pornography by default oppresses women. This is the pornography, this is the sex industry I'm talking about. This is the issue here. The alcohol is a very small area, okay, and I want it to grow, I do. I think it's good, I think it's a better representation. It still objectifies women though, okay? The pornography harvests girls as raw material, dispenses them by mid-20s when they start wising up, okay? I've been there, I know. Okay, the girls don't truly give conformed consent. The only people that really know what's going to happen is the men that've seen it all before. They're rarely humane either, because when you try and buy these images back from these mistakes that you've made when you're young and not thinking, or maybe drunk or going through a bad time, they just laugh in your face. They don't let you have the images back. I want laws to get these images back after 10 years. Okay, that's what I'm asking for, not to ban porn. Okay, very few of the women who used to be in the porn industry think it was a good idea later in life. They look back and they think they were tricked. I know, I've spoken to them, I know them personally as well as knowing a lot about research. Women rarely live life to the full after. They hide in the shadows so as not to be discovered. I took a decision to be discovered and face it, okay, head on, okay, and not care anymore, okay, and it was hard though. It took years to get there. Well, the answer is because, okay, even if we accept that porn is disgusting, gonzo porn, why should we ban it? We're liberals after all. Okay, the answer is, you saw what happened in Germany on New Year's Eve. Okay, hundreds of men in gangs were attacking women. I believe this was an encouragement from the porn industry. I also believe the rise in acid attacks is men against women chucking the acid. Okay, I believe that's a direct response from the porn industry. The fact that women are subsidiaries, okay, they're unimportant, they're sex objects, they're toys. Okay, that's the idea that's been perpetuated, that's been projected out there. Okay, porn doesn't just hurt women, it also desensitizes the consumers of porn, brutalizing mindsets, it creates fresh perversity in the young who don't know no better, encourages young girls to value themselves on a fake harness sexuality, and it's fake, it's a myth, okay? Young people are not sexualized at young ages, but they now are. You look at any Facebook stream of any young girl, they're wearing lipstick, they've got cleavages pushed forward, okay? And boys, clever boys. My son's in grammar school, he calls him and his friends sluts, girls, yeah? This is ideas that are being perpetuated out there from the porn industry. Click of a button, 18. It's not good enough protection for the young. Okay, so here it is. Any product that dehumanizes women, that desensitizes consumers, damages the people that produce it, shouldn't be legal. As in the impact it makes on society, it objectifies women, encourages misogynistic behaviour. Vote to ban the gonzo genre. That's what I think.
I probably don't have much time left, and I don't really feel there's much more to say, to be honest. I mean, this is the reality. Is these guys, in some ways, they're right. I mean, if you try and ban this, it's gonna push it underground. But the hard line of this is that people's lives are being absolutely ruined.
absolutely growing. Those within the industry, those who are consuming it, something has to be done. The way things are at the moment is not good enough. We need regulations, we need hard lines, we need stamping down on this. I know it might be naive to say that we're going to take out 93 billion, I think it was, out of the economy. Does that mean that we shouldn't do it if actually it's damaging people and hurting people, right? It comes down to me, I might be naive, I might be silly, but to me this is just wrong. People like Vicky should not be being abused, hurt, and something needs to be done.
Thank you to the proposition summary speakers. Thank you to the opposition summary speakers. Thank you to everyone in the audience who spoke, and again to all of the speakers who spoke at the beginning, and everyone in the audience again for being so sportive and so courteous and such a good audience tonight. So applaud yourselves and applaud them responsible. As some of you will remember, some of you especially, I have a prize to give out. But before that, I would like to take tonight's vote. I'd like to get my two vote counters out again on the floor. And I would like to once more run through the three positions you can take. Which are again, proposition is saying that you think porn should be illegal. Opposition saying that you think it should not. And abstention saying that you are unsure, or you think that neither side is indeed completely true, or a number of other explanations. So the first one we go for is proposition. Who now, after hearing all these arguments and thinking about what's been said tonight, can characterize themselves in proposition? Who believes that pornography should be made illegal? Cool. Those are counted. Let's see if they are. Who thinks they're in opposition? Who now puts themselves in the opposition camp? Who thinks that pornography should not be made illegal? And who is perennially unconvinced? Who is on neither side? Who is on abstention? Okay, looks like that's counted. I'm going to get my vote keepers over here. Cool, so we're just counting that up. Before I announce the winner of the debate and the winner of a choice of prize, I'm going to say that next week we're running This House Opposes TTIP. Most people in this room have heard of TTIP. It's a big transoceanic trade deal being worked out at the moment, which is controversial for many reasons, some including that it is negotiated secretly. It may be argued to restrict union rights, local countries' rights, but some people will say that it is very good, because it enables countries to trade and therefore decreases poverty. That it increases economic growth and therefore improves the measurable amount of people's lives. Both of these viewpoints are valid, and we hope that everyone can make it to that to expand their minds on another issue. That's next week, next Monday, next 7 p.m. I hope everyone can join us there. And of course, if you want on this Thursday, we run trainings this Thursday by membership. Come on to that. Learn to debate almost as well as these fine speakers. It's very fun. I have in front of me the result of the vote and the result of the winner of tonight's floor speech. So, I think I'll first do the floor speech. The winner of tonight's floor speech is unfortunately not someone who I know the name of, but someone who. Sorry about that. The winner of tonight's floor speech is, though all the floor speeches were, there were multiple ones that on that night may have won, so don't feel discouraged just because you would make the top exactly this time, you'll probably do in the future. But tonight, we felt the best one that introduced the most interesting views in the best way was Matt. Please come over. And now, the result of the vote, and what might be called the result of the debate as a whole. Before we had this debate, when people came into this room, we had 12 people in proposition, this motion arguing pornography should be made illegal. We had 23 in abstention, and we had 71 in opposition. Afterwards, after everything had been heard and all the views had been stewed round in everyone's minds, we had 24 people in proposition, we had 46 in opposition, and we had 47 in abstention. So that was a net change of plus 12 for proposition, minus 25 for opposition, and plus 24 for abstention. So by that, it might be said that abstention won the day. I think it's always a good thing when people's views shift massively, because that means that people have been exposed to ideas they haven't thought of before. So everyone here should be very proud of themselves. And we get one final hand for all the speakers just after I say my final part. I hope you all can join us tonight in the TCR bar, which is where we, the committee, and I hope some of the speakers are going after this to continue the debate in a less formal venue. I hope you can appreciate our 10% student debating discount. With no more ado, thank you everyone again, and finally, bye!